You will hear a telephone conversation between a customer and a telephone service representative. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello, Cheap Calls Unlimited. This is Adam O'Shaughnessy. How can I help you?
Yes, I heard something on the TV the other day about cheap local and national calls. Do you have a new offer available at the moment?
That's right. You would have heard about our special no-limit offer.
Oh, how does it work? How can I save?
Well, do you make many calls outside your local area?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact I do. I often call my mother-in-law in Sydney, and sometimes I call Perth and Melbourne. We've got family there.
Okay, where would you be calling from?
Brisbane.
Right, this would be perfect for you. How it works is you tell us which city you call the most, and we'll set up a special offer for 3 cents per minute, no matter what time of the day you call. But it gets better. We also offer 10-cent local calls. No other telephone carrier can offer you such a cheap plan.
Wow, that is cheaper than what I currently pay. But what about international calls? I often call America. What are your rates to the States?
Our rates to the USA are also competitive. You can call America for 6 cents per minute. This also includes a connection fee of 15 cents.
That's competitive, all right. So, how do I sign up?
Well, we can do it right here over the phone if you like. Or I can send you out an application form. Or I can email the details with a form attached. Which would you prefer?
Well, how long will it take over the phone?
Oh, just a matter of 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do it now.
Right then. First off, I need your name and address.
Okay, my name is Mandy Silverstone. That's Silverstone. My address is 16 Hazelwood Street. That's Hazlewood Street, Belmont, 4173.
Good. Now what about your telephone number, date of birth, and do you have an email address?
Yes. The telephone is 55223481. My date of birth is July 13th, 1972, and my email address is mandy@tele.com. That's MANDY@TELE.com. Why do you need my date of birth?
Before you listen to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 7 to 10.
Right, okay. Yes, we'll request your date of birth for security reasons. We'll ask you this each time you call us to request information about your account. Not for making a payment, but, if you wish to change any of your details or change your plan, those kind of things.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, right. Well, we're finished. Do you have any other questions at all?
Yes. When does this new service actually start?
Yes, I'm going to send the information to our sales department. They'll process it today and your new service will be ready tomorrow. By next month, you'll really start to experience the savings.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that's all I wanted to know. Oh, when will I receive the bill?
That'll be 1 month from the day you signed up. It'll be sent on the same day every month thereafter, unless you request a change. We can send them every 2 or 3 months if you prefer.
That completes section 1. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers. You will hear a student housing officer giving a talk to a group of university students concerning dormitory renovations. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
After months of discussion and planning, we are very pleased to announce that the renovations will be made to the west wing of the university dormitories. Now, with this good news comes some bad, as there will be some disruptions to your living environment. But we think once you hear our plans, you're going to be very happy with what we will be doing. Firstly, if you'll just take a moment to look at the plans we gave you as you came in. Firstly, on the eastern side of the wing, you'll notice that there will be a change in the existing front entrance. It will be removed to another location on the opposite side of the wing. I'm sure that a lot of you will be glad for that, as our present configuration didn't allow for enough lighting. With the renovations will also come the removal of the existing staircase, but not the column beside it. Now, as we move west, we come to the location of the new security entrance. As with the old one, there will still be a need for some new lighting, so we're planning to install a number of overhead lights, which will make entering and exiting safer for you all. It'll be at this new security entrance that the new wall will be built to a 2-story height. This gives you an idea of the size of the construction. Overall, the width will be around 6 meters, with the overall length being around 10, which I'm sure many of you are going to really enjoy. More room for all of you living in the West Wing. Are there any questions?
Before you listen to the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now, as I mentioned, there will be some issues we will have to overcome regarding the renovations. The first will be relocating some of you to new dormitories. 30 students will be moving for a total of 6 weeks. Now, of those who will be moving, you will be distributed to 3 other temporary locations, the North, South, and East dorm wings. 10 students will be relocated to each wing. This means that some of you are going to need to get packing. Don't worry about your new location. We're doing all we can to make your new temporary dorms as comfortable as possible. In fact, as I speak, we're making steps to ensure that you have study desks, lamps, and computer facilities, and all of the other facilities you require to successfully continue on with your studies. We're even repainting several of the rooms in the preparation for your arrival. The changes to your dorms will be starting within a week. If you have any problems, don't hesitate to contact my office. Now, I'm sure some of you have questions. I'm happy to answer them now.
That is the end of Section 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers. You will hear a discussion between a professor and university students about online learning. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 27. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 27.
Good afternoon, everybody. As part of our education studies, we're going to continue our look at online learning and examine what it takes to be successful in this area. Perhaps I should start by asking you to answer the question. Yes, Edward?
Well, I guess one of the most important things for successful study would be discipline. I mean, you don't have to physically be in a class, so you'd have to really make sure you did your coursework.
Yes, this is correct. In fact, my first point relates directly to this. Make sure you regularly plan enough study and assignment time. I separate the two because although they relate, they're not exactly the same. With study time, you're focusing on general information as you plan for tests, but with assignments, you might be focusing on presenting more specific information. What else? Yes, Sylvia.
Well, it seems to me that before you even start studying, you should make a well-informed and carefully planned decision about which university you're going to study at.
Yes, I was going to say that too. It's important to work out where you're going to study first. And another thing you should consider is your career objective. Your course of study should relate to your job.
Absolutely correct. Once you've worked out where you want to study. Another thing to consider is your attitude towards study. You should build a positive attitude, take responsibility for your learning. Unlike regular classroom learning, no one will be there to stand over you and make sure that you do the work. As with regular learning, it's also important that you work hard in your own time to build your written and spoken language proficiency, as well as your ability to improve your analytical and logical reasoning. You should develop research skills which allow you to make the best use of your time. If you see something that might be helpful for an assignment, make a note of it.
What about note-taking skills? Would an online learner need well-developed skills in this area?
Good point, Pam. Lectures conducted online or via telephone will certainly require you to have good note-taking skills. Sometimes a copy of the lecture notes are available, but certainly you need to be able to take notes and write essays. They relate to your assignments. Another point often not considered is physical health. We all understand that physical health relates to mental health. Take care of your body by doing exercise and eating well, and you'll do better in your studies. My last point is simply to enjoy the experience. Learning should be fun. If you've put in the time to decide upon the best course for you, then enjoy yourself. Those who enjoy their course of study are those who will typically do well. So students should choose their course well.
Before you listen to the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 28 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 28 to 30.
I'd now like to discuss the assignment for this part of our coursework. Firstly, the assignment is due in 3 weeks. I've reserved information for you at the library. Speak to Carol and tell her you're in the education class. She'll allow you access to the materials I've reserved.
Professor, can we borrow them from the library?
Some of them can be borrowed, but only overnight because other students may need to have access to them. You'll have to complete an overnight sign-out form.
What about the length of the assignment?
No less than 1,500 words, and please, no more than 2,000.
What about the format?
I want that double-spaced and in Arial 12-point font. If you have any other questions, remember to either call my office or you might like to email me. My email address is...
That is the end of section 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers. You will hear a lecture about the Inuit Eskimos of Alaska and Canada. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon. In our lecture today, we will continue our study of people who inhabit the northernmost regions of the world. Our focus will be on the native inhabitants of Alaska and Canada, the Inuit Eskimos. They have been called the native inhabitants, as the Inuit were the people who had most recently migrated across the gap between Alaska and Siberia. Distinctly Asian in origin, the Inuit, which is literally translated the people in their native language, developed their civilization in what is now the Bering Sea region about 1,000 years ago. Their culture spread eastward and is called the Thule culture, after the place in northern Greenland where archaeologists first discovered it. The first Europeans to meet Inuit people were Norse settlers in what is now northern Newfoundland, Canada. These settlers lived there for a short time around 1000 AD. Approximately 500 years later, beginning in the 1500s, European whalers, fishing crews, and explorers met many Inuit along the coast of Labrador. Russians and other Europeans first met Alaskan Inuit in the 1700s. 100 years later, in the mid-1800s, whalers began to hunt in the Arctic. Some Inuit were employed by whalers and traded with them during that time. Perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of the Inuit is how they were able to survive and grow in such a harsh Arctic environment. Firstly, and not surprisingly, their homes were well adapted to the freezing conditions. They lived in predominantly two types of housing that would keep them warm. In the cold summer, they would live in tents that were made from the skin of the animals they had hunted for food, and they also traveled in boats. These were called umiaks by the natives. In the winter, they would live in houses made of sod, and when on hunting trips, they would commute by dog sled and build temporary houses made from ice. These igloos, which is the Inuit word for house, were uniquely made with a sharp blade carved out of walrus tusk. They would cut large blocks of hard-packed snow, about 3 meters wide, out of the ground. The blocks would then be used to build a 6-meter dome over a wide, shallow hole. Within 1 or 2 hours, an igloo up to 10 meters in length could be built. It was weatherproof and large enough to house an entire family. Very early in their history, they managed to develop the technology to hunt the huge bowhead whale, which was the staple food source for them at that time. They also hunted walruses and seals. On land, they hunted polar bears, moose, and various other game. The harsh environment in which they lived meant that a steady supply of food was often difficult to come by. Therefore, the Inuit were a people constantly on the move, looking for food, which meant that their dwellings had to be easily built and easily dismantled. They inhabited the wide open land and, as such, moved freely around it in search of food. Today, the traditional way of life has basically ended for the Inuit. They live in wooden homes rather than in snow houses, sod houses, or tents. They wear modern clothing instead of animal skin garments. Most Inuit speak English and Russian. Some speak Danish, while fewer still continue to hold on to their cultural roots by passing on to the younger generation their native language. The kayak and umiak, their principal means of travel, have given way to the motorboat, and the snowmobile has replaced the dog team. The combined percentage of the Inuit population in Alaska and Canada stands at 63%, the latter being 29% and the former around 34%. Some Alaskan Inuit live in towns and cities, but the majority live in small settlements and hunt and fish for most of their food. Most of those in Canada live in towns in housing provided by...
That is the end of section 4. You now have 30 seconds to check your work. That is the end of this practice lab test. At the end of the real IELTS test, you would now be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.